Alright, so what I've got for you today is a very interesting series of StarCraft 2. I really hope that these guys decide to cheese each other at some point, but please don't do it in game number 1, because there's a lot to explain here and there's a lot going on. Are we gonna go for an extractor trick? That would be perfect, okay. It's gonna be a hatchery first for our Zerg. It looks like it's gonna be a pylon scout right here for the Protoss. Okay, so that gives me a little bit of time to explain exactly what's happening. So first off, in the top right-hand corner of a map called Hackett, that's game number 1 in this Best of 5 series. Playing with the red Protoss pieces, we have one of Europe's greatest Zerg players, and he goes by the name of Lambo. His opponent in this particular match, playing with the blue Zerg drones, one of the all-time greatest Protosses, we have none other than ShoWTimE. Alright, so first things first, these guys have decided to play the opponent's race. For God knows what reason. I have no idea why they decided to do it, but you know what? I'm here for it, and that fact alone would already make for a very fun video. Secondly, however, all of the games in this particular series are going to be played on the upcoming StarCraft 2 maps. Now, it's not completely set in stone yet, but it's very likely that every single map we're going to see here today is going to be part of the upcoming StarCraft 2 season as well. I believe it's expected sometime, sometime next month, sometime in October, I believe, but don't quote me on that. It's going to be interesting to see, though, how these maps play out, and obviously these guys, they will have a little bit of practice on these maps, but not nearly as much as the conventional StarCraft maps that we've been seeing over the last half year or so. And then lastly, and maybe most importantly, this particular series was played during a tournament called, quote-unquote, a Real HomeStory Cup. Now, obviously, HomeStory Cups, they've been happening twice a year for, well, the last 13 years or so. It's been happening for a very long time. But this particular one is a little bit different than the conventional HomeStory Cups that we've had over the last couple of years. For example, the prize pool, it was completely donated by the viewers of the tournament. And the first place prize was just as much as the 8th place prize. Every single pro gamer that participated in this event was just playing for giggles and just for a bunch of fun. And the reason for that was quite straightforward. This is an event where the rules were a little bit different. Alright, Lambo. That was very ambitious. I don't think that was ever going to happen, but I guess he knew the prop was going to die anyway, so he decided to... Okay, just put down the spray right over there in his opponent's natural. Okay, so let's just say that in the early days of StarCraft 2, right? From TakeTV, the organizer of HomeStory Cup, invited pro gamers to his apartment in Krefeld in Germany. The players would get, let's just say, a little bit intoxicated, and then they would play some fun StarCraft 2 games. And over the years, the company grew. They got this really nice studio these days, still in the same city. However, obviously, with the prize pool growing and the tournament importance growing, the seriousness of the event has also gone up quite a bit, as the pro gamers really want to try and do their very best, especially when there's EPT points on the line as well. They really want to try and, well, win as many series and games as possible. So obviously, the vibe has changed a little bit. And Dennis, the, well, owner of TakeTV, from TakeTV, decided with this particular event to try and bring the old school vibe back. Now, these days, he doesn't live in an apartment anymore. He lives in a really nice home, well, still in Krefeld, and he decided to invite a whole bunch of pro gamers to his home once again. Well, let's just say that the old school vibe, at the very least, as far as, how do we say this, liquor? As far as liquor goes, was once again there. So, I believe that right before this particular series, both of the players decided to take a shot. And I can imagine that that does not really help too much when it comes to playing high-level StarCraft 2, but it will, of course, increase the fun here, and it may very well explain why that probe just ended up sticking around to the natural of the Zerg for a little bit too long, prioritizing the spray rather than its life. Alright, so with that all out of the way, it's been 4 minutes. I think I've done a decent job explaining what's happening here. With that all out of the way, I think this series can get properly started. I have no idea what to expect, so I was there at Takes Home on day number 1, so that was Saturday, not previous Saturday, but the week before that. I couldn't be there, however, on Sunday, so I was already back home at the time. This particular series was played during day 2 of the event, so I actually don't really know what ends up going down here. Alright, so, let's see. Oracle harassment? Turns out it's a skill you have to practice a little bit. 2 drones, really nothing to write home about, especially when you do go for that triple Oracle start. There is still 1 Oracle available. I guess he was hanging out at home to try and see if he maybe could defend against the Zergling run by, but none of that really happening here. So As a matter of fact, I mean, ShoWTimE doing the ShoWTimE special, just defending here. Not even going for the Spore Crawler at the third base. He does have one in the natural. He does have one in the main base too, but apparently he's feeling confident enough in his queen control to not go for the Spore Crawler over here just yet. We'll have to see if he gets punished for it, but so far these guys are playing a very conventional game. Queen's waiting over here. Oh, we're gonna just zap the queen to death. Relatively slow reaction speed right there. As one of the oracles gonna go down, it will go down. Second queen though will also fall here, and that is quite painful. 2 queens for an oracle, couple drones as well on the way out. Not bad whatsoever. In the meantime, we've had that Twilight Council on the back of this together with the Forge here. There we go. Ooh, okay, we're gonna be going for a charge slot all-in, it looks like. Doesn't necessarily have to be an all-in, but generally speaking, if you go for the charge and the +1 upgrade, it does mean that you want to start putting a lot of pressure on the other side of the map. If you want to go for a more macro approach, usually it's going to be the blink upgrade first here instead. ShoWTimE has decided to go for the +1 missile upgrade here, rather than the very popular +1 melee right now, and I actually think that's an excellent choice. Should work out for him here really nicely against Zealots in particular, assuming he gets the upgrade done in time, but I mean, unless Lambo decides to chrono push this regularly, I think he's gonna be a-okay in that department. Creep spread looking solid here so far. This is a map, by the way, that has a bunch of bridges here. Aren't there multiples? Yeah, there's another bridge right over here. So 3 bridges here in total. Do we have a Prism already out? No, Prism is still coming up. Load of gateways here started up as well. We have the Templar Archives. So Lambo is basically gonna go for an Archon Zealot all-in right now. And I don't really know exactly if ShoWTimE is aware of it. One thing though that ShoWTimE has done very nicely here is drone up effectively. So even though he did end up losing a bunch of drones earlier, I mean, he did get the scout of the 4th Nexus together with the Archon Morphin. I think he realizes what he's playing against, although he's making 4 Overlords right now, which is not ideal. He did get the High Templar over there, so that's quite nice. Oh, he's going Swarm Host? That's why we're making so many of those OVs. Okay, so ShoWTimE has decided to play a strategy that he probably hates playing against, and Lambo is doing the same thing. So maybe this is actually kind of a good study as well, right? Of what Protoss players hate playing against and what Zerg players hate playing against. So apparently Lambo thinks this build is easy to play and something he can easily win games with. Whereas ShoWTimE is thinking the same thing of his Roach Swarm Host style. Both players have effectively gone for a fake 4th. So, ooh, don't lose the Prism, no! Oh god, that's huge. Alright, well that puts ShoWTimE at a dominating advantage. Losing that Prism, I mean, that's one of the few units you cannot YOLO away here. Losing an Observer is okay, losing an Oracle, I mean, all of that is not great, of course, but losing the Prism shuts down the attack. And that effectively now makes that 4th base no longer a fake. I guess we're just gonna start, well, making as many probes here as possible. But now Lambo is gonna have to play defensively. He's still gonna have one hell of an army, so that's nice and all, but this is a very scary force. No Nidus Worm though here for ShoWTimE, so gonna make it difficult. Nice set of force fields. This choke point over here is actually very tight. We don't see any Ravagers in the mix right here for ShoWTimE, but he does just simply have the numbers, it looks like. Here come the Locusts. They decide to go for, ooh, okay, a sandwich attack right here on this Protoss army, and that was beautiful. If there was like 2, maybe 1 or 2 Ravagers in the mix here, I think this would have been fantastic here for our Zerg. Apologies, by the way, in advance if I accidentally call ShoWTimE the Protoss player and Lambo the Zerg. I mean, I've casted so many of their games over the years that I may accidentally autopilot into calling them the wrong race here for a little bit. Anyways, the Queens have shown up as well. Nah, with the Locust on cooldown, I don't know if I like this all too much right here for the Zerg. That's a lot of losses right now. I mean, he is killing a bunch of probes, but Lambo already has a very stellar probe count. Okay, Locusts are available once again. Imagine if he had all of those Oracles still up in the air, right? That would make a very significant difference. Loads of units being warped in as Lambo has got 11 gateways. 11 bothers me, okay? I'm okay with 10, I'm okay with 12. 11, I am hashtag team even when it comes to gateway counts. Yeah, very important to always, like 7 gateways? Nah. 8 gateways, yes. 10 gateways? Yes. 9 no. Some people though are team odd, and apparently Lambo, maybe a little bit odd himself, huh? Going for 11 gateways here in total. I think that's actually a little misplay, probably didn't mean to make that many. But he had the money for it, and he did have a whole lot of probes previously as well. Still does have them as well at this point, but a few of them are going to fall. Where are all of the Swarmos at? Okay, we're apparently sending in another Locust wave over here to try and deal with that group of Zealots. I mean, this is a playable position right here for Lambo. It's just that it's not looking all too great for him, especially if he ends up losing a bunch of those Oracles to Corrosive Biles. I think we can probably write up some of those mistakes to being somewhat intoxicated, right? I think that's fair to say. I mean, all of the Immortals are gonna go down. With a bit of refinement, I think this game would have been really good for Lambo, but it's ShoWTimE who wins game number 1. Okay. Site Delta is gonna be game number 2 in this best of 5 series. This is a map with a very big, wide open space in the middle of it, especially once all of those rocks go down here. Once again, conventional opener here from both players. It's gonna be that Stargate start here for Lambo, triple hatchery opener here for ShoWTimE. Now, by the way, of course, these players are not taking this particular series all too seriously. So, you know, you definitely want to cut them a little bit of slack in the comment section too. These guys are just hanging out with their friends and having a good old time while playing some good old StarCraft 2. Maybe, you know, having a little bit too much fun sometimes. I think that's one of the main appeals actually for a lot of the pro players as well at a, I guess we can call it a conventional HomeStory Cup because this tournament was called a Real HomeStory Cup. Anyways, even though the prize pool for the conventional HomeStory Cups is not necessarily as big compared to some of the other StarCraft 2 tournaments that we've had recently, there's no denying that if you get eliminated from a HomeStory Cup, you're still just hanging out with your buddies. It's a very nice atmosphere. If you happen to live in Germany, for example, I highly recommend you go and visit one at some point. It's a good time, and yeah, the players are pretty much all good friends, right? Like, that's one thing you can easily forget about these guys that compete against each other all day, every day. In order to practice, they have to practice against each other, because when you are one of the very best players in the world, you can really only make progress by playing against players of a similar caliber, right? And there's really only a handful of guys. So for many of these players, they've been friends for many, many years at this point, and yeah, even though they compete against each other, and at that point, obviously, the gloves are off, and these guys are definitely going out swinging, there's no denying that they will still, they'll be friendly out of the game, right? They'll be friendly out of the game, maybe in-game, not so much, but yeah, they have to be good friends out of the game in order to compete at this level. You can't just, you can practice against the easy AI, I guess, if you want to, and really grind out your mechanics and maybe play ladder games and all that. But for effective practice, doing custom games really is the key. And yeah, I can imagine that these guys do practice against each other all the time. So they're not really taking this all too seriously, this particular event, but ooh, if I know StarCraft players, they're incredibly competitive. This is a couple of adepts over here at the third base. Yeah, maybe you can get some damage done over here to make up for that lost Oracle just now. I mean, 7 drones is definitely not bad. Gets one more Zergling here as well, I would imagine. Okay, pretty respectable. One thing I've noticed actually from StarCraft players over the years, again, at like conventional HomeStory Cups, usually there's like a little bit of break entertainment as well, right? Rather than having like a timer on the screen as to when the next game will start, we usually have a couple of mini games in between. And this can be anything from like baking a cake to playing beer pong, right? Like silly stuff like that, just to make sure that the downtime of the tournament while we're casting the games live is not as boring as it sometimes, well, can be, especially if there's like technical difficulties, for example. And one thing I've noticed, with even like stuff like baking a cake, these guys are incredibly competitive. They'll be looking up like, well, I was gonna say build orders, but I guess recipes. Recipes are essentially build orders. They'll be looking up cake recipes, and they're trying to make sure that they practice their knife skills. They'll be looking at a YouTube video, how to optimize stuff and how to effectively measure things, and it is so funny so even though this is a casual tournament and they're not really taking it all too serious, there's no denying that these guys really do want to win. Anyways, Lambo effectively going for the same strategy as he did in the previous game. Yep, it's once again gonna be charged together with the +1 upgrade. We do also have the Templar Archives right here next to it, and I'm assuming we're gonna go up to at least 8 gateways. Let's not do 11 this time around, okay? I would say 8 or 10, not 9 either. Is he once again gonna go for a 4th base? I mean, honestly, right? All jokes aside, if you are a Protoss player and you're struggling in this matchup, this build that Lambo is playing is probably something that you can execute over and over and over and over and over again in, for example, a custom game against a very easy AI, just until you get it down to a T, and then you can execute on the ladder, and I can almost guarantee you that this is gonna win you games. Probably 9 out of 10 times, up until Grandmaster League or so. This is one of those builds that really is very powerful. We do have a little bit of variety right here for Mr. ShoWTimE, however, as he's decided to go for a Dropper Lord. Maybe he's been looking at some of those Serral games lately, but this is something that is relatively high skill. He wants to, of course, go into the Queen drop here, I would imagine. Bringing out the German taxi here against the inventor of the German taxi. I think that's what's going on, actually, isn't it? Lambo is the one that invented the German taxi. With the Queen drop, that's exactly what's going on. ShoWTimE is going for the build that Lambo has come up with and popularized, like, well, maybe 2 years ago at this point. It's not really that strong anymore these days, but hey, if your opponent gives you an Oracle like that and a couple Adepts and maybe a couple Zealots here and there too, I mean, you may very well be able to make it work. ShoWTimE going for an aggressive push here. He does have a 4th hatchery, so I thought he would play something similar as well, but this is just him going, well, for a very powerful push. The Queens here, I mean, they have to be on creep in order to transfuse each other. That was not the optimal engagement. Obviously, Lambo has played this build many times, and he's lost with this build many times as well, I'm sure. So he knows how to, well, combat this as Protoss, but I still look at this Zerg army here, and it's looking absolutely menacing. ShoWTimE's macro, by the way, real solid. Like, he didn't really... Maybe his execution of the pushes has not been quite as good as we would expect at like the highest level of StarCraft 2, but macro-wise, he seems very on point. Another one of those oracles gets biled down. Not quite ideal. Not usually what you're aiming for. I think this is just too much. Yeah, look at ShoWTimE, just happily macroing on the back of this. He remade Queens at home. He may have missed one inject or two, but he still has plenty of larva to just continuously reinforce this. And it turns out that the German taxi has almost turned into like a German Autobahn right now. Look at that. There's just creep crossing the entire center of the map. Lambo forced to pull the boys right now, and you know that at that point is a pretty desperate scenario. He still does not have enough to shut down the roaches, and that means that ShoWTimE wins game number 2. Game number 3, we find ourselves on a map called Oceanborn. Now it's once again gonna be the same opener right here for Lambo. He's decided to go for an Oracle, whereas ShoWTimE has decided to go for the quick triple hatch. He's been scouting with Zerglings all around the map to make sure that there's no proxy Stargates or anything along those lines. And honestly, I gotta say, I'm very impressed by ShoWTimE's Zerg so far. He's looking crisp, right? Like his execution is looking really nice and macro-wise. He's really not skipping a beat. He's been punishing his opponent for that Oracle control earlier on. If you lose an Oracle or two, you're just so vulnerable to those Zerg follow-up attacks. And yeah, I feel for Lambo, it's really tricky here in the earlier stages of a Protoss versus Zerg to get damage done while also at the same time keeping all of your units alive. And that is ultimately what you're aiming for here as a Protoss player. You want to commit to the mineral line with these Oracles, but at the same time you also really can't afford to lose any of the Oracles, because even if you kill a lot of drones, the follow-up attacks from those Zergs are going to be absolutely lethal. So I wonder if maybe Lambo is going to change up his playstyle a little bit here in game number 3, because so far it's not looking all too hot. Now, by the way, I played a couple games on Oceanborn. I far prefer spawning at the top section of the map just because of this gigantic sea monster shadow that is just floating around your natural. That's only at the bottom section of the map. It is not at the top section of the map. I much prefer. Maybe I'm crazy, but I even checked on whether or not this is available still when you switch to the lowest graphic settings. And it turns out when you're on the lowest graphic settings, yes, the sea monster is still flying around your natural. So anyways, Oceanborn, other than that, looks like a solid map though. Can't really complain. Alright, so here's once again... Ooh, okay. I was gonna say once again the Forge together with the Twilight Council, but the Forge is no more. What are we gonna do? Harass some workers? Fair enough. The only reason to cancel the Forge is if you've got something different in mind. Okay, we're gonna go for Blink this time around. Fair enough. So I think Lambo has looked at this game so far, and he's like, you know what? It's never going to be a great situation if I do the same thing once again. ShoWTimE now also, though, going into the +1 melee upgrade, which I do believe is really good for him. We have a lot of additional gateways now on the production tab. We're gonna go for an even amount of gateways. That I do appreciate. Ah, we're gonna go for a proxy. Okay. So Lambo basically is once again gonna go for... I don't want to call it necessarily an all-in because the previous 2 games weren't super all-in, but you know, all in-ish, right? He's got all of his oracles still up in the air. That's huge, especially if you're gonna go for a dedicated pressure. Let's call it a dedicated pressure. That's what Blizzard used to call it back in the day, whenever they would describe a cheese. Zerglings over here do get the wraparound. Queens also do show up, so those oracles aren't just gonna be able to clean all of this up. New creep tumors? Lovely play here by ShoWTimE, honestly. If ShoWTimE finishes the +1 melee, this hold is gonna be straightforward for him. But obviously, that's still a while away. Blink is gonna be done far before that. ShoWTimE actually only... Or sorry, Lambo. I got them two mixed up here. Lambo only with a small amount of workers this time around. So this is far more committed than the previous game. He's got a stasis ward over here too to catch any of those Zerglings. But he knows he's on the clock. He knows that his opponent is going to be able to produce an awful lot of units here moving forward. So he really does have to get a move on. So that's why he's trying to almost invite those Zerg units off creep. Okay, for now though, this is fine. Blink over here to protect the gateway and the pylons. But the clock is ticking. Blink is done, but so will +1 melee be done here very soon. Bunch of Zerglings trying to go around, but at this point, there's not quite enough yet here for ShoWTimE. Does ShoWTimE even... Yeah, he does have a Roach Warren, but he's just making mass link. Just a million Zerglings. He did catch one of the stasis wards there. Once again, lovely play there by ShoWTimE. But he's gonna have to commit here very soon. 71 Zerglings, 9 Queens, 24 Stalkers. The Oracle's mostly out of energy here, but they will still have a bit. And his position is actually really lovely. Slowly inching forward. Now with the Stalker ball growing though, it's really quite difficult for Zerg to get a proper wraparound, right? Like when it's like half this amount of Stalkers, the surface area is about as big as it is right now with all of these Stalkers. Stasis ward, okay, gets rid of a lot of those Zerglings. And suddenly we have about as many Stalkers as we have Zerglings. More coming in from the back. There's already 2 pylons over here though, so killing a pylon is not gonna shut down this push. And if push comes to shove, I mean, ShoWTimE can always just warp, or sorry, Lambo can always just warp in units from his own natural expansion as well. Okay, now this was wonderfully executed. The invitation off creep was accepted here eventually. It's one of the reasons why we see those corrosive biles be so effective usually. Lambo gets a point on the board, nice. Next up, we find ourselves on the map Heartlit. Heartlead? I've been pronouncing it as Heartlit, but I've heard some people pronounce it as Heartlead. I think it's Heartlit though. It's the only thing that really makes sense. Anyways, a couple of Zerglings are over here on the right side of the map. Once again, it's going to be a triple hatch opener right here for ShoWTimE. Stargates start right here as well for Lambo. Nothing all too crazy, although ShoWTimE is adding on a few more Zerglings here at home. Probably just to try and defend against the Adepts that will probably be coming across here soon. Yeah, he wants to run in right now with the links, but I think Lambo should be able to cancel the shades. There we go. And actually get a few Adepts right now at home. Okay. Probes go away. Oracle is now a little bit delayed as well. Not quite ideal, but nothing all too crazy here either. Nah, this should be an easy cleanup. Alright. Smoothly done right there by the German... Pro-Zerg? Perk. Zertos. I don't know exactly what you would call a... I guess a hybrid. I was gonna say, I don't know what you would call a hybrid between Zerg and Protoss, but I guess... Yeah, lore-wise, you would probably call them a hybrid. That does make a lot of sense. He's got more links, though, waiting off to the side. Maybe these two are in a little bit of trouble. I'm not entirely sure. They might actually be spoiling the surprise. Stalker really does need to get into this wall off right now, though, which it's not in just yet, but the Oracle is available, and all things considered, I think when you can warp in a few units here, you're probably gonna be fine as the Protoss player. The thing is, this is costing the Zerg quite a bit of economy too, right? Which is one of the reasons why we don't really see it all too often at this level of play. Like, yeah, killing 3 workers is nice. Slowing down the, you know, Oracle here going across the map. I mean, it's obviously gonna happen sooner or later, but it's nice and all, but you're also slowing down your own economy quite a bit. So for every 2 Zerglings, ShoWTimE could have made a drone. So he's effectively delayed his own economy by quite a bit, and obviously even before he killed any of the workers of the opponent too, time really is of the essence as, as a Zerg player in StarCraft, so it's always a little bit tricky. Alright, so this is a much nicer start right now here for Lambo than in the previous games. ShoWTimE trying to get a little bit fancy here with some of his decision making. Not a huge fan. Nope, not a huge fan here. The way that Lambo handled that was really quite solid. Bailing Nest right now on the back of this, together with an Evolution Chamber as well for ShoWTimE, so... No Roach Warren, no Lair, or anything along those lines just yet. We'll have to see exactly what the man decides to go for, as it looks to me like he's thinking about making a 4th hatch already? Yeah, I think he's just gonna power out workers now. Okay. He's doing that Zerg thing where you kind of fall behind in workers early on, but then, you know, you give the opponent almost like a false sense of security. They didn't think, like, you almost gaslight them, right? You gaslight them into assuming they're very far ahead, but then you hold down the drone button. And assuming Protoss doesn't come in swinging with a whole lot of units, usually you're gonna be okay. Bunch of Zerglings over here, good drone pool. The Queens are gonna help out as well. Should be okay, although he might lose a few more workers here. Couple of the units now in the bottom left-hand corner. This is, of course, long before any sort of blink is done. So Lambo has started a blink together with the +1 upgrade once again, but it's gonna be a while until that will finish. ShoWTimE actually thinking about going for a counter-attack right now. Sometimes a hatchery can almost serve a little bit as bait, where like Zerg can always just cancel this and call it a day. Only lose a minimal amount of resources there, but obviously if Protoss, yeah, is gonna commit heavily to trying to deny it, and they end up losing a whole lot of their units just like this, I actually don't think I like it all too much. So in the end, all of these Zerglings are gonna get cleaned up. Yeah, 4 Stalkers here. And the hatchery, maybe most importantly, actually, does stay alive. Wouldn't have been the end of the world, because you can see ShoWTimE actually already started up another base as well. I think in this game, all ShoWTimE is really going to do is just play Lings and Banelings. Just Zergling, Baneling, and maybe something else later on, but for now, I mean, if there was going to be Archons, I mean, there will probably be Archons, and maybe even Sonic Storm. It's going to be in a lot of trouble. Now, he decides to just go full Ling Bane. Okay. This really does not strike me as a ShoWTimE special over here, man. ShoWTimE usually that macro player, especially with Protoss, of course. He's now shown the Banelings as well, I would imagine. I think Lambo knows what he's playing against. As long as Lambo doesn't take critical amounts of damage, I think he should be a-okay. Like, you can see him once again leading in the work account. This is actually a thing that Zerg players oftentimes do when they're playing their off races. They will make way too many workers. So Lambo already at 71. Really nothing all too crazy, but normally this would be the moment where you do, maybe 5 workers ago is when you do want to stop making those probes for at least a little while. Maybe he didn't actually see the Banes on the side, I'm not sure. Alright. So ShoWTimE wanted to go for a committed attack, and then he decided, you know what, it's not going to happen, so I guess I won't. But that also makes the game now very awkward, because yeah, he's got all these units, but he didn't really get anything done with them. Blink, by the way, is done. Charge is coming up, and Sonic Storm is indeed researching. Archons and Storm are fantastic against Ling Bane-based unit comps. So he can get the council on that, especially with +1 now done. Yeah, the Zerglings deal a tremendous amount of damage. No council there by Lambo, so that's 400 minerals down the drain. But quite a few Zerglings also ended up going down. I think that would have been really good if Lambo did actually end up canceling the Nexus for him. Oh, looks like that pylon was actually blocking all of this too. Can we just get a couple of Archons going? A few Banelings here, trying to see. Oh god, okay, he must have noticed here that the wall is not perfect, but turns out it was just bait for the Stalkers to blink forward. And some damage here has been done. Nexus, I mean, not available yet here on the right side, but this is starting to be one of those games where Protoss is growing here at a faster rate than the Zerg. And I mean that mostly as far as tech goes. In absolute numbers, yeah, this is an excellent game, of course, for ShoWTimE. He's got Baneling speed coming, he's got +2 coming, he's got the Roach speed. But generally speaking, Roach speed will finish up long before a Sonic Storm research would ever finish up. And Lambo's army here is nothing to scoff at. This is a very scary force. Maybe supply-wise he isn't quite there yet, and this can still be an absolute disaster if he does not, well, control these units correctly, or he gets distracted and he has a bunch of Banelings in his mineral line. But as this game goes on, ultimately, the maxed out army from Lambo is going to be significantly stronger than the maxed out army here from ShoWTimE. So ShoWTimE has now finished up the Centrifugal Hooks research. Charge is finishing up right around the same time, +2 melee very far behind all of this. These Zerglings are once again out of stasis. They're gonna, well, go straight back into another stasis. Apparently they kind of like it. I don't know what the Zerg units think while they're in stasis. I don't even know if Zerg units think in the first place, if I'm being brutally honest with you. Do you think time just stops for them? Do you think they can still witness everything that's going on right now, or do you think they're just completely blacked out here? Yeah, so anyway, ShoWTimE here is maxed out. Roach, Ravager, Ling Bane. He's gonna try and create a distraction. Normally, though, when you're maxed out with this army, Protoss' army is not going to be nearly as big. Nice storm right there on some of his own units, but he does blink away. Probes run away from that area, too. Lambo looking real solid when it comes to the defense here. Yeah, other than that one Stalker in the early game not being on hold position, but I mean, we see this from Hero all the time, right? Like, Hero uses the all army hotkey maybe a little bit too liberally. If you can also grab all of these without using, okay, the Templar? Ooh. Almost a disaster. Okay, that is excellent. Okay, so very soon, Lambo should be going across the map. Yep, more Archons, more Immortals. More Zealots. I mean, this is a very scary Protoss. The creep spread is solid. We don't actually currently have an Observer out, so that's the only criticism I guess I really have here. If we can get an Observer going as well to start clearing out some of the creep that's now almost knocking at the third base. Lambo, by the way, just going for a 5th Nexus. When he's ahead, he's trying to get more ahead. And now the War Prism on the other side of the map is starting to put in some work. Okay. I feel like Lambo has really tightened up his gameplay a little bit, right? Maybe he's sobered up a little bit. maybe that pre-game shot really did, yeah, not help out all too much. But maybe things are a bit better now. Hey, by the way, the creep spread's outside of the map? That's funny. Look at that. It's not actually... Okay, well, maybe I should pay attention to the main armies here, but... This is not accessible area, I don't think. It's not something you can actually do anything with. He did force the council, ShoWTimE that is, on that 5th Nexus of the opponent. And he does also have 1,000,000 minerals in the bank. So, assuming he's got the larva, yeah, he can remax with a ton of Zerglings, but the Archon count here is insanely good. Lambo on the prowl. I like it. Maybe a big warp in somewhere over here, or anywhere around the map would be good. Try to create a distraction. That way, there's always a chance that the opponent is accidentally gonna roll their Banelings into, for example, your Archons, and that's exactly what Protoss players are looking for. One Archon take 20-something, one Archon can take like 20-something Banelings, which is massive. Okay. This base is in a lot of trouble. Bottom left in a lot of trouble. Warp it in the main base, at the very least get pushed, but at the very least... Warp it in the main base, at the very least gets pushed back, but GG is called. And that means we're going to the rubber match. Golden Aura, game number 5. Momentum has swung in Lambo's favor here. He's also successfully blocked his opponent's natural from coming up, as the 3rd base was forced to be taken first here. That is always something that Protoss players are very happy to do. Lambo definitely knows how annoying it is for a Protoss player to get that block in the earlier stages of the game. This time around, by the way, doesn't look like there's any sort of Zergling shenanigans right here for ShoWTimE. He's just gotten himself the 100 gas that he needs right here for that link speed, and then he pulled out. Not really over-making Zerglings here to go for aggression on the other side of the map either. Okay, we'll have to see. So the waters have been thoroughly tested now, right? Both players know exactly what the opponent is capable of. They tried getting some cheap wins against one another. Didn't really work all too well. Now we're gonna be forced to play a macro game. Incoming 45-minute long epic macro game where the entirety of Golden Aura gets mined out. I mean, that would be surprising. I don't think that's gonna happen. Anyways, there's a good couple of bases on this map that are very interesting. So you have this watchtower over here that does control the bottom left, but the bottom left really does feel very far out there, you know? It is technically accessible, and I would imagine it's probably easier for the Zerg player to take than it would be for the Protoss. Whereas the right side of the map, I mean, these bases are still very far apart. Yeah, you know what? I was gonna say that they're easier to defend, but it really does feel like that's still a ton of distance to cover. So I'm not exactly sure. Like, taking 4 bases is relatively easy for Protoss. Taking 5 bases, also manageable. After that, though, I mean, obviously the vast majority of games end before a player would ever consider taking a 6th base, but I would imagine that in the late game, this map will probably be more comfortable for the Zerg. At the very least, those are my initial impressions. I've only seen a handful of games on this map so far, so don't quote me on anything. I would imagine even actually, if you have... Say, for example, these 5 bases here are all taken by the Protoss. So, like, this... Sorry, that was very bad camera work. These 5 bases over here on the minimap, I would almost imagine that it's easier to take the gold at that point than it would be to take this base up here. Because you'd be expecting to watch your opponent if you take the gold. I'm not sure. Anyways, Lambo just Well, sniping Overlords here, trying to get a little bit of damage done. Not really achieving all too much. Once again, though, going into the Forge, going into the Twilight Council. And he's got himself the triple Oracle now available as well to start harassing on the other side of the map. So rather than using them offensively right at the very start, as soon as they popped out, we used them defensively until now 3 are available. And you can definitely get the kill on that base. Yeah. Bzzzt, bzzzt. It does cost a lot of energy. So if you want to defend now at home, for example, you might need some of that energy. But as long as the SimCity is okay, we have a unit over here in the Wolof. I think this is alright. Getting a good chunk of workers as well, though it looks like... No. One of the Oracles must have pushed back. Must have pulled back. There we go. Saving itself. Preserving itself for a later stage of the game. Okay. Now this is the type of early game we're looking for. Obviously these workers are relatively late. Compared to like the worker kills that like a hero would be getting, or maybe a max pack would be getting, right? Because they'd be flying across the map with the first or maybe the second Oracle. Lambo waited a bit, so obviously the economy for ShoWTimE is already a little bit bigger, and therefore he can replace those workers a little bit easier too. But there's no denying that this is much better, especially since he didn't lose anything, than we did see in the previous games that started off similarly to this. +1 melee though. Gonna finish up here for ShoWTimE. Macro hatch in the main base. Baneling nest over here together with the roach speed. Okay, he's at full 3 base saturation right now. He's got another 4th hatchery coming up here at the 6 o'clock position. He's gonna be okay here as the game progresses, but apparently Lambo, okay, we're gonna go full circle apparently. He's decided to go for the same build that he did not find a whole lot of success with in game number 1 and 2. I don't think, though, that this is ShoWTimE making a transition towards any sort of swarm host play or anything like that, right? So he's gonna play that high-level Zerg style, which is admittedly very good, but also very difficult to play properly. Roach Ravager, Lingbane, I mean, it looks easy, but it really isn't. I've done it many times before. Playing that Roach Swarm host style feels like... It feels so much easier. It feels so much more straightforward compared to what ShoWTimE has got going here. So, technically speaking, ShoWTimE should have all the tools at his disposal to shut down this Protoss attack that is incoming here very soon. However, it is also something he needs to be controlling properly. If he accidentally rolls his Banes into an Archon, for example, that is the end for Zerg. How many gateways are we on? 9 right now. 10th one coming up. That's good. Round numbers. No! No! What's this? Gateway number 11? Ah. Anyways. Let's see. He's got a good eco as well, Lambo, actually, on the back of this. This is actually a very scary Protoss push. Because it doesn't really look like a push. You know what I mean? Like, it looks like he's just wandering around the map, putting on a little bit of pressure. He's got a 4th base as well. But he definitely is planning on going for an all-out assault here very soon. I do like, by the way, that ShoWTimE in the meantime did drone up to 80-something workers here. So that's a good amount. You can see that reflected right now on the supply count immediately too, right? That economy for the Zerg kicking in. Yeah. We go down the roller coaster there. Okay. So, Warp Prism goes to the main base. Yeah, it wasn't really an attack. But it's not like he really has a pivot here either, where I guess he's gonna go into, yeah, the Storm upgrade, fair enough. I guess Lambo looked at that army there from the Zerg and he realized, okay, it's gonna be difficult for me to get much done, but it also kind of feels like he's on a bit of a timer here. He needs to get something done. Roach is over here at the front. I mean, this is also that awkward moment right now for ShoWTimE, where he made all these units for defense, but he doesn't really get a lot of defense out of them. So now, oh my god, he may get trapped over here. No! It's a Zerg sandwich. Well, I guess technically speaking, actually, Lambo over here. Okay, he does get the probes in, or out, I guess, in time too. I guess technically speaking, it was the Protoss there that was the bread, and Zerg was just like the meat of that sandwich, right? Since he obviously came in from both sides there. Good pull on the workers, though. Only a small amount of probes has actually gone down. Lambo really powering up, not losing the prism inside of the main base of the Zerg now either. Okay. Yeah, I feel like ShoWTimE's macro and game sense is really good, but his execution on these pushes is not as good as it should be. And obviously, I'm being quite critical here. I understand that this is, you know, not the optimal playing situation. Plus, he's playing off races, and we're playing different maps and all that. But if I can be a little bit critical, without being mean about it, if there is something that ShoWTimE can probably improve on when it comes to playing Zerg, because his macro is really good. Like, he's not missing any of the basic mechanics, you know? He's not missing any of, like, his creep spread or injects or anything like that. All of that is looking really solid. His drone timings are great as well. So this is still definitely mid to high Grandmaster MMR. But overall, in these last couple of games, I've actually been a little bit more impressed by Lambo. He's playing a cheeky game now too, though. This 4th base, the 11 gateways. Did we cancel? Maybe he lost a couple of them. He must have lost a couple. Yeah, he lost 3. Okay, so we went up to 12. That's good. That's good. I can get on board with that. Anyways, here we go once again. ShoWTimE. May have actually caught his opponent off guard now, though. Okay. Probes are starting to fall. Careful. Careful. Don't attack move now. Yeah, that's a lot of banelings. I actually think that's okay now for Protoss. His Nexus will fall as well, but that is an awful lot of losses for the Zerg. In the meantime, there's also aggression going on over here. Prism is still around, so... that is also much better right there for Lambo. Yeah, these guys know exactly what the most annoying build orders are to play against the opponent, right? The most annoying strategies that you can possibly play in a game of StarCraft 2. I'm actually kind of keen to give out this, or to give up, or not give up, give some of these build orders a try myself. I haven't played a lot of Swarm Host lately, but is what ShoWTimE ended up going for? I should probably play some of that myself. Oh god. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So that's exceptionally expensive for the Zerg. Like, he didn't kill anything and he lost a whole lot. So if you look right now at the resources lost, yep. The gas count in particular is so significant. And that's why I do like playing Roach Ravager Ling Bane, but I also don't. You know, I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. Because when I play it well, it feels incredible. But when I accidentally lose a bunch of Banes here and there and like, oh god, he's setting up a massive surround right now. That's what we're trying to do, but the storms are nice. The stasis wards are solid as well, and ShoWTimE's army just got wiped off the map. In the meantime, Lambo also did a big warp-in over here on the right side of the map, and the Prism is still around too. We're going to be able to get rid of some of those reinforcing roaches. The Protoss army right now is stepping onto the creep. He's brought an observer in the mix. This is looking like some stellar Protoss replay, or some stellar Protoss gameplay, rather. I guess it is also a replay. Fair enough, Lowko. Sick commentary, man. Thank you, me. I'm having conversations with myself now, but genuinely, though, the level of gameplay here from Lambo has gotten thoroughly more impressive as this series went on. Yeah, game number 1 and 2, relatively sloppy. There's no way. This is not something ShoWTimE can clean up with this army. He would need Brute Lords. Maybe Lurkers could do the trick, but there it is. Lambo, after being 2-0 behind, obtains the victory over ShoWTimE Zerg 3-2. Now today I want to give a special shout out to the Patreon supporters. Thank you very much for directly supporting the channel. If you're also interested in checking out some of the perks, you can head on over to patreon.com/LowkoTV. There's a link down below in the description of this video. And if you decide to sign up, definitely make sure to shoot me a message on there as well. Anyways, for now, thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to smile, and I'll see you once again in the next one.